My name is Christopher Smith. It's December 3rd, 2005 at approximately 11 a.m. I'm here with Tim Horgan, who is a World War II veteran. Mr. Horgan, where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn? What year?
1925.
1925? And where did you go to school, like high school?
I went to St. Francis Prep. And that was when they were in Brooklyn at the time. Now they're out in Queens. And they're greatly increased, up to 4,000 students. When I went there, they only had 400.
Oh.
So it was a big high school down there now.
And where were you on December 7th, 1941?
I was still in Brooklyn, because I was only 16, 17, and I went to the movies. Every Saturday afternoon to go to a movie. I come home and I found out we stopped at a candy store there, and I found out everybody was crying in there. I was wondering why. And I found out was the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
How did you feel about that? What was your reaction?
Well, I'm young, and didn't quite realize exactly what was going on. Not until I can absorb it more. But then, no, too young, 16, 17 years old.
No. How did you get into the service?
Well, it was the draft time, and I turned 18, January the 18th, 1943. I had to go up and register to the draft board. And they said, fine, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to school. When are you going to graduate? I said, June. I said, fine, we'll see you then. And sure enough, the second week of June, I get a postcard in the mail, go over to Grand Central Palace in New York for my physical. So I went through my physical over there, and when you finish your physical, then they say, there's tables over there, go pick your table. Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, whatever. So I picked the Army.
And what unit did you...
And then, at that time, I passed, I got sworn in, 14th of July, 3 weeks after high school, graduated high school. And they gave me 2 weeks to clear up all my businesses. The 4th of August, I had to go back to the draft board that morning. They took me on a subway, on Long Island Railroad, out to Long Island to Camp Upton, which is the indoctrination camp out there at the time. And I stayed there a week or so, and then I got out of training again for 2 days. Wound up down in Waco, Texas. Fort Hood, Texas, just outside of Waco. We got down there at 130 degrees heat. Well, all us New York boys had to go ahead and get acclimated to the weather. So we didn't do anything for about 4 or 5 days. So we go ahead and get our bodies adjusted. And that was a tank destroyer training I went through. And then that lasted until day after Christmas. They gave me a 10-day furlough. Delay en route furlough is what they called it at the time, to go to Fort Meade in Maryland. So I came home, and then I was home for New Year's there. Then I had to go back to Maryland. We stayed there a couple of weeks. And then we got back out of training again, went on up to Massachusetts, to Miles Standish, Camp Miles Standish, which was a debarkation camp, which means you assemble all your troops together from the camp, right outside of Boston. Get down to the harbor in Boston, get on the boats, and go the convoys over to Europe.
So when did you go overseas? When did you leave?
In February of 44. Just turned 19.
And where did they send you?
Well, I was in England. I landed in Liverpool, England. It took me 15 days to get over, which is a different story. It was a big ocean liner, but it took us 15 days to go over. And in Liverpool, then got on, we went over to Wales, up in the hills of Wales for a couple of weeks of training. Now, this was in February, March of 44. And we knew D-Day was coming, the invasion was going to come, we didn't know when. But May, I'm still a replacement. See, back in '43, the whole graduation class of young fellas was all destined to be replacements. Because the year before in '42, all the services had their organizations already set in place. And then '43 group coming in was going to be replacements. Because once you get into combat, well, you got to keep feeding the troops. So anyway, luckily, in May, we had as a replacement a top sergeant, which is a misfit. Because generally in an outfit, you promote within. So how are you going to get a first sergeant to come in and be the boss of an outfit? But at any rate, they started setting up a replacement depots, which was to take the troops that come in, go off the boat in Liverpool, Southampton, get on train and bring them down to our camp. It was a camp just set up temporarily outside of a town in Taunton, southern England, and would process all the GIs over 36 hours. And would let all the goodies stay. A lot of guys would come over with irons, OTs, dress shirt, it was all tail and whatnot, buddy. Throw it in the pile in the corner, and we two of this or one of this, or three of these or four of these, you got outfit one on there, back, get them out in 36 hours, get them on a train, and ship them over. And this was right after D-Day, June 6th. Luckily, I was there. My buddies I went overseas with, they hit D-Day D+3. But if I didn't take this job, temporary job, I would have been with them. But fortunately I did, and I stayed there all summer long because we didn't have the facilities in France yet. And June, July, August, and at the end of September, then they opened up Le Havre in France. So the ships would run over Le Havre to unload the soldiers coming over. So then I got into the replacement pool, and then I got assigned to the 2nd Cavalry Reconnaissance.
And they were with Patton's 3rd Army?
I was with Patton's 3rd Army. And it was a history, big history of the 2nd Cavalry Reconnaissance, 2nd Cavalry Group. They're going back 150 years. But anyway, my Colonel Reed was a graduate of West Point, 1922. His first assignment was Camp Fort Riley in Kansas, which was a cavalry. So he started in the cavalry. As well as General George S. Patton. He too was a West Pointer. And he too was a cavalryman from way back. In fact, he was in the Olympics. But that's part of the other story. But they're both cavalrymen. And very aggressive organization. And you learn a lot between Colonel Reed and Patton. Patton didn't take any guff at all. And Patton, General Patton, he was a military general. Not a politician, a military general. He'd get his assignment and he'd go. He wouldn't take any malarkey. He'd go.
Did you ever meet General Patton? Did you ever?
No, I never met him, but I saw him.
You saw him?
Going to some town out of camp. Back when you went to the service, when you were in combat rather, you don't know what day of the week it is. You don't get any daily newspapers, and you don't get the news on the radio or whatever. So you just go from day to day to day, and there's one town, he come on through at his Jeep, his escort, and there is pearl-handled guns. He was noted for his pearl-handled guns. And also to his, almost like an Eisenhower jacket, and his riding breeches, because he's a cavalryman, riding breeches and high boots and riding boots. And it was his key. And that was his thing. But yes, I saw him once coming on through.
And when did you first see combat? Was it in France?
Yes, it was in France in November. About the 1st of November. Again, you don't know what day of the week it is, a month. But after I left, it was in October, I was being processed out of England, on over to France, and then I got over there. And then it was about the 1st of November, whenever it was, I was assigned to the Cavalry, and that's where I started. And that's when the 3rd Army was running across France, and the only way you could stop General Patton was to stop this gasoline supply, because we get too far ahead. They were getting too far ahead of the front lines of the other outfits. But anyway, they picked them up in November. That's when they first started.
And about then, the Battle of the Bulge was getting ready to take place.
Well, we actually were in Germany. 2nd Cavalry was in Germany, down in Saarbrücken, in the Alsace-Lorraine Saar region of Germany. And we were on our way going through Germany, when all of a sudden we pulled this invasion up there to the north of Belgium and Luxembourg. And that was the weakest part of our line up there at the time. And when that came on the 16th of December, I was down in Saarbrücken, and 2 or 3 days later, I think it was, when Patton got his orders to make a 180-degree turn, go due north, we went up into the Battle of the Bulge. And I was in Luxembourg at the time, on the southern end of the Bulge, on the Moselle River. And the Moselle River going, well, that was a good barrier for the front line. And I stayed there in January of December, about the 20th, 21st, or whatever it was, that we landed up there. And that was a feat in itself, taking a whole army and moving it in 2 days, right up north. But I stayed in Luxembourg for the Bulge. And by the way, that winter was the coldest winter in 50 years. And I mean cold. And all us GIs, we didn't have wooden hose. And we try to layer up 2 pair of pants, or 2 jacks on it. I had my socks. I had 3 pairs of socks, one on the other. And every day I'd get up in the morning and rotate them. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1. And so sock was next to my skin that took all the perspiration. Then I put it on the outside, and the other 2 socks were on the inside. Because a lot of the GIs got transport. Our boots weren't waterproof. And the snow and cold. That was a rough winter.
I can imagine.
And in fact, see, we weren't equipped for it. We didn't have our winter clothes. It was all light stuff. And then in the Battle of the Bulge, we had these white parkas, like a sheet, so that we'll go on patrols. Most of the patrols are at nighttime. So you go on patrols at night, you blend right in with the terrain. It's all snow on the ground. And I mean a couple of feet of snow. So that's the way you can go out on patrols. You find it. That didn't come until about the middle of January. The Army was real relaxed in the equipment of the GIs over there. I really had sorry for the infantrymen, because they were in the foxholes all the time. They had no place to get warm. At least I could go ahead and get into a house on the first floor, always on the first floor, for security reasons. The back door is our escape route, but never in the front.
So, when you went up to the Bulge, did you see much action there? Did you help break through to that?
Oh yeah, we're right there on the Moselle River. And the town I was in was a small little town down along the river, and it was called Ardennes, A-H-N. And it's in the wine grove country. And the wine grove country is you've got the mountains and the hills coming down into the river. So at daytime you couldn't walk around because the Germans were on the east side of the river and they were watching you. So if you go walking around in the town, they'll take pop shots at you. And conversely, we saw them walking around, we'd take pop shots at them. I mean, you know, I'd break up the monotony somehow or other. And that's what it was, so you had to be careful. And his patrols going back and forth.
Now, when you broke through, did you get a chance to meet any of the soldiers that had been surrounded? Any of the men you went in to relieve?
Not really. Not really, because we were holding our position and keeping maybe 8 or 10 miles along the river free. And that's what we'd have to do at nighttime, is go out on patrol and walk up and down that road. Be sure that the Germans had come across the river and come in on their patrol, they would come and play havoc with us. So we'd have to go ahead. And the funny thing is, your eyes and your mind wanders a little bit when you're out on guard duty. And we had to go out every night, always had guard duty, into the wine groves. 2 hours on, 4 hours off, 2 hours on, 4 hours off. So when you're out there for 2 hours, it's cold, you just gotta look and listen. See if you see any enemy patrols going up and down the road. And I can remember in January it was clear, cold, blue sky. Now and then you'd have a cloud going by, you know, partly cloudy. You'd see those wine groves doing the march up and down. You know how a wine grove is, with the poles sticking up to keep the vines of the grapes.
Yeah.
And every now and then, when it's so clear, and a cloud would come across, and it would change your opinion, and you'd look out again, and your eyes play tricks on you, and you think that they're marching on you. Oh yeah. And you're out there, and you don't talk, you just look and listen. And cold, 2 hours. You come on in, God, you come back into the house again, there's no warm in the house, because there's no central heating in those homes over there. It was all in fireplaces. And he couldn't start it in the fireplace, because the smoke would go through the chimney. The Germans would see the smoke coming up. So a couple of mortars over on you. So what we actually did, in the back of the house, we'd go ahead and break through a pane of glass. You know, there's about 8 panes of glasses, or 9 panes of glasses in the window. Break out one of those, get the stovepipes, rearrange it, put it out that window on the first floor. So by the time you get to the top of the roof, the smoke dissipated. Otherwise, if there's already smoke, expect some mortars coming all out there. But then that wasn't that warm either, so you had to be in sleep bags and cold, really cold.
Once you got away from the river and the bulge, where did you head to next?
Well, we started going across Germany. And I don't know how I can describe it to you, but it was just going right to Germany. It's on the south side, because the first Army was up north, and we're in the middle of the 3rd Army, and the 7th Army was on the south side of us. But we'll go right through Germany. And there was another item there too I can tell you about. Security. When we start, right after the bulge, we start then going fast across Germany. The skies opened up because during the winter in the bulge, it was all cloudy, snowy and miserable. And then when it started, the clouds, the sky opened up, then you have the P-47 planes come around straighten. And what they would do is they'd come down and take a look at the troops moving, come down and straighten the enemy troops, hopefully. So to distinguish between us and the enemy, they issued us linoleum cloth. It was maybe about 6-8 foot wide and by 3 feet, and it had straps on the end. We put those on our vehicles, and every day it was different color. So it was the color of the rainbow. There's a red one, there's an orange one, there's a blue one, there's a white one, whatever. But we had to step them on our vehicles. So when the planes would come in and try to look for the enemy and strafe the enemy, they'd spot us, and then they would spray us. And that was one thing that we had, that we had for maybe about 2 months. Every day we had different color linoleum on our vehicles to distinguish it. If those planes come in, and we're out in the front. We're doing spearheading, reconnaissance. That's what it is. Well, find out what's out there, and draw the fire first. Thank you. So it was a little hairy, but I'm only 19 years old, so I can handle something like that. Thank God. Yeah. So then I went right across, and then we hit the Rhine. I crossed the Rhine in Frankfurt. Oh, and when I went down to Frankfurt, I can remember that was the first time I had a shower in 3-4 months. And the outfit come on in, would set up a great big tent and had these showers all along. So you gotta have take your clothes off in the pile, get your shower, come on the other end, and pick up clean clothes, look for your sizes and so on. But we crossed the Rhine in Frankfurt, and then we kept going through Germany, and actually we were on our way to Prague, in Czechoslovakia. And I was about 40-50 miles inside Czechoslovakia when the war ended. And, well, let's see, at the end of April, almost to the Czech border, there was this concentration camp called Flossenburg. I don't know if you're familiar with all the concentration camps there, but that was one of the ones. And we liberated, and all of a sudden, just one day we're going through, and come into this town and come across this concentration camp, Flossenburg. That, my boys, is a sight we want to see, really. You ever see the movie Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg?
Yeah.
He did a very good portrayal of it. Or in fact, I even got the Band of Brothers. Remember the Band of Brothers tapes?
Yeah.
One of those tapes in there is the concentration camps, and that's true. It's a true story. And I don't know how anybody can say that was false. It was all made up. I saw it. We got in there, and elaborate that a little bit. My sergeant, see, I was in an M8. It's like a scout car.
Okay.
And I drove the M8. And my sergeant, see, there was 10 of us in the team. We had a lead jeep with 3 guys, and it was mounted 30 caliber machine gun. The scout car, which was 4 of us, my commander, the gunner, radio man, and myself, the driver. And then behind us, our third vehicle, the jeep, that was a mortar jeep. That's how we patrolled down the highway, the roads, highway, back roads, 2-lane roads, whatever. And when we got in there, we saw the concentration camp. We got in with the Germans from the camp. We were going out the other side of town when we come in. But we got up there, and they were so excited to see us that they wanted to get out naturally. They were liberated. But my sergeant was Polish descent, and he grew up in Detroit area, Michigan area. And he could talk conversational Polish. And these people, I always had a couple of languages they could talk, and one was Polish. And you could tell them, okay, you're safe, you're liberated, but we can't let you out. Because really, if we let them out, they would have ran down the street. After 100 yards, they would have fell right on their face and died. Because they're so weak and so excited. So we kept them in there, and I can remember get my canteen of water and just give them each one a little sip of that water, the little cap you have on it. Just give them a little sip of water. We'd have their rations, break off our rations and give them a little bit of rations because they're so hungry. And they couldn't eat or drink that much. So at any rate, we told them the MGs were going to come the next day and let them out and take care of them. But it was my sergeant. He could talk the Polish, talk the language, and he calmed them down a little bit. Well, that was at Flossenburg, the concentration camp, and then right after that we got into Czechoslovakia on our way to Prague. And all of a sudden, we get orders to stop, can't advance anymore. Which now I know from history, the reason why, it was from the Ultra Conference that Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin had. And that was when they divided up Europe. Russia was going to get Austria, Czechoslovakia, today is the Czech Republic, and the Soviet, they split it up. And then Eastern Germany. The United States is going to get the southern part of Western Germany. The British are going to be the north part of Germany. And Berlin is going to be split in 3 zones. The Russians, the British, and the American. And now you always know the Berlin Wall and all that story. But that's the reason why we had to stop. And I was in the town of Klatowy in Czechoslovakia. And we couldn't go any further. So, our colonel went ahead and got our F troop, which is a tank troop. And he put him on the outskirts of town, and he says, don't let any Russian come in here. We arrived, and we had them out there. We couldn't advance. And it was only a day and a half we could have been in Prague. We were liberated Prague. We couldn't go. So we had to wait until the Russians came to us. So we were in Kentucky. The next morning, we looked up, and there's all American flags. You know, all of the European cities have a town square. And there we are, we're downtown square, and all the buildings in the town square was American flags. Because we liberated the town. So after a day or two later, when the Russians came into Prague and liberated Prague, we wake up the next morning, we see no more, all American flags are down, the Russian flags are up. Because the Russians liberated their capital. So, after a couple of more days, when the refugees didn't want to stay under Russian rule, and they were migrating west to come over to Germany, come under United States rule, then they started bringing some stories with them of how the Russians treated them when they went into Prague. They trashed the place. Now, the Russian soldier himself is a different breed. They didn't have any food. They were real rough, tough. So they started coming back to town through the border with these stories of what the Russians were doing. Next morning we wake up, the Russian flags are down, the American flags go back up because they knew how we treated them, and the story changed their mind. So that was then we had to pull back. I was about 40 miles into Czechoslovakia, so we had to pull back on the border. And that's when we stayed for the rest of the summer on a border patrol there between Germany and Czechoslovakia. Control the movement of refugees coming back and forth. So that's why I wound up Czechoslovakia on the 8th of May, when the war was over.
Was that where you were when you received orders to go rescue the Lipizaners?
Again, as I said, you don't know what day of the week it is. You don't even know what month it is, Holly. And all I know is we had to have, well, there was movement going on. The actual story, which I have now in my book, my history book, when I go back, and it was our sister squadron in the Cavalry. And we made up maybe about 300 to 400 on each squadron. That makes up the group. So there's only about 800 of us there. And it was the sister squadron there under Captain Stewart. He led this task force in there to, well, when we tracked it back. He captured a German general. And through this interrogation, he told us about a prisoner of war camp in Czechoslovakia in Hostel, Czech. And it was made up of American, British, French, and Polish prisoners of war. And there's also 1,000 horses in there too. So one letter to the other word, and there's about 150, 200 of the Lipizanians. So as soon as he mentioned a breed of Lipizanian, my colonel ears popped up, immediately called Patton. Patton said, "Get him." On the spot, go. So he made up this Captain Stewart. He had this task force, and when he went into Hostel in Czechoslovakia to go ahead and liberate the prisoner of war camp, and we did. And then we went ahead and we got those horses out of there, and we had to bring them into Germany, into Schwarzburg, Germany, which was a German horse breeding camp. As the Germans knew the value of the Lipizanians. The Russians, forget it. You could look at horse meat. They cut the horses up for horse meat. So we went ahead and we got into Schwarzburg in Germany, and I was just doing the support. I never saw it, but I knew we got orders to clear this road, be sure that town or whatever. That's cleared. No pockets of Germans around at all. So that was my involvement of the Lipizanians rescue. It was on the outskirts of giving them support, be sure that they could get out of Czechoslovakia and into Germany. And then in the end of, about the third week of May, if the war was over, and we had the horses up there, we inspected them, and they had a couple of veterinarians come in, and we transported them back into the Spanish riding school in Vienna. And then we saved that breed for it was about 150, 200 horses.
And how did you feel knowing that you were involved in the rescue of a breed of horses?
I didn't realize it at the time. All I knew was we had a job to do. Go out and clear this road. Be sure there's no landmines on the roads. There's no trees that and fell the trees, put trees across the road. And the biggest little trick that the Germans had was string wire across a road from one tree to the other tree. And if you remember your World War II pictures of the vehicles, you see that L iron that they had in the front of the bumpers? That was the reason for it. Because mainly the guys driving the Jeeps would have their windshields down. So going down the road, you wouldn't see a wire, and all of a sudden, they'd catch you right there and decapitate you. So that's why all those vehicles had that L iron, the little hook on the top. So if they did go down, they cut the wire, to break the wire. So that's what we be sure the roads were clear, that they could travel on there, and then all the towns were cleared. But they had one of those segment up there. The task force went in. There's a little pocket of SS troops in Germans, and they gave a little resistance. But thankfully, we had more firepower than they did, so it didn't last too long, and they gave up. So that was a little one-note scurvy. So that's what they were afraid of these little pockets of Germans that bring the convoy out to get ambushed. So that was my own involvement, but I didn't realize exactly what was going on until I could hit history. But here in my book, in July of '45, when the war was over, we had the Russian Cossacks come in and put on a show for us. We're cavalry, and the Russian Cossacks are cavalry, and there's a relationship between horse lovers. And the pictures here was not as clear because they're too far away. But they're out there doing all that traction of the horses, going jumping on one side, the other side, and riding them and all that stuff. So I saw that in July. But I didn't realize what we were doing until after I can start reading some history. Then to put it all together.
What did you think, like when the war ended, how did you feel? Were you excited?
Very relieved. very relieved. Oh, yeah, well, I was there since November of '44, and this was in May. So that's, 6 months, 7 months. And in between going through the Battle of the Bulge, that was rough, the Battle of the Bulge. You had guys losing feet with the trench foot. We weren't clothed. And then when you had out patrol, even the infantry going, and they get shot and fall on the ground, out in the field, you couldn't go out and get them because then you'd be subject to being shot. So you'd have to wait till the nighttime to go out and get them. So you got out there at night, that's after 5, 6, 8, 10 hours, whatever it was. The guy's frozen. It was below zero. The guy's all frozen on you. But with that, the Battle of the Bulge was a rough affair. That was a rough affair.
Was that the hardest fighting you ever, the worst?
Well, it was the conditions. The whole conditions. In fact, right behind you, did you see it on the door? That's my old uniform, my old jacket.
So you got promoted to corporal?
Yes, I was promoted to corporal.
When was that?
Oh, maybe about February, March. Yeah, promoted to corporal, and that there's a jacket that I had when I was 160 pounds. A few pounds ago. I can't get into that thing today. But I have it, and I have my ribbons on it, and my battle stars and whatnot. And just patch open this right shoulder here is the 2nd Cavalry patch. And then on the other side is the outfit I come home with, which is the 90th Infantry. And we were spearheading a lot for 90th Infantry. See, what the Cavalry Reconnaissance does, goes out on the drive on a point, or come and flush out between the two drives, between two divisions going through. We'd have to flush out in between, be sure that there was no enemy pockets in there. So it'd come around and cut off the drive. So we would cut them off. So we would either point or flushing it out in between the drives in the town. And back countries, dirt roads, 2-lane roads. We just had to make sure there's no enemies around. But we'd draw the fire first.
In your in the survey sheet that you filled out, you mentioned that you got the Purple Heart.
Yes.
Where were you wounded?
It was during the Battle of the Bulge. And in this town that we stayed in, we have to have security. So we'd set up booby traps in certain areas. So when you come out of the house that you were staying in, you'd go 20 steps this way, take a left, 15 steps, take a right or whatever, because the booby traps would have it set with wires. So if anybody's walking around there, trip a wire, the booby trap would go off. And that's how we kept our security. And this was right after what they declared the end of the Battle of the Bulge, the 25th of January, but that still lingered on into February. But at any rate, you never drank the water over there because you didn't know if it was contaminated. You never had milk. That was forget it. Even in England, you don't drink milk. So what you did is you drank wine. Not powerful wine, but just wine. And everybody over there drinks wine. And you always had a bottle of wine, and we'd take a sip of wine a couple times a day, and that's like drinking the water. So my buddy, one of my buddies there, he ran up a platoon, there's 30 of us in a platoon, 3 teams, 10s. And he went ahead, and he was looking to get a couple of bottles of wine. So he went down a couple of houses down there, and into the basements, and you always have a wine cellar in the basement over there. So he went in and he picked up a couple of bottles of wine, so that On his way out, in the corner of the building, we had a booby trap set up, a couple sticks of dynamite, with buckshot shells taped around it, sitting on a 5-gallon of gasoline. And that was what we had set up there. So when he came out, he ducked under the wire, but he had his gun on his shoulder, and the point of his gun was still up when he came on through. He didn't duck down far enough, and he tripped the wire. And when it exploded, that gasoline came all over his clothing. So we heard the explosion. I came out, I was the second guy out, get down and see what happened to him. And here he is, all in flames. So my first instinct is get rid of his clothes. And I went ahead and I was literally trying to pull his clothes off. And I got quite a bit of his clothes off, but he was still on fire. And then after a minute or two, he just fell right down in front of me, dead. And when we take a look at him, he was already dead from the hook shots. You can see all those holes over his body. But his skin and his upper chest here was just like a stuffed pig. When you spigot the pig on an open fire, and that smell of skin is something you don't want to smell. So at any rate, my both hands were all burnt. Not serious enough, but enough that I had to go back to the medics, and they put all salve on me, and they bundled me up with mittens. I call them the white mittens, all the gauze on it. And that's where I had for about a week. It wasn't enough to send me back to the hospital to get me back out of the outfit. No, they put you back to the front line again. So I had mittens on here for about a week. I had no duty. The only duty they gave me was to get on that telephone and wherever we were set up for a command. And I was working the telephones, so I could go ahead and get a telephone up this way, but nothing else. So that's how I got my Purple Heart, was watching a guy on fire in front of me and trying to pull off his clothes. Hell of a sight. Hell of a sight. Poor guy just, well, he's gone. They burned right up in front of me. Fell right down. So that's my Purple Heart. And I understand they put me in for a Bronze Star, you know, for bravery of doing that. And he came on back and says, well, a quarter for the month is up, so we can't issue another Bronze Star. I said, whatever. Let it go. But that's how I got my Purple Heart, is trying to pull off gasoline-soaked clothes of my buddy that was up in flames. But it was a hell of a sight. And just 2 or 3 minutes, it was all over with. Boy, you know, I pulled off most of it. The other thing I couldn't pull off, it was like his collar or his belt. I could get the other clothes on. But see, that's a double stitch, double layer of clothes and whatnot. And I got all of this off, all of this, pants off, and everything else. But I got all my hands burnt, so I get Purple Heart. I was thankful. Nothing else happened. After a couple of weeks, I was back to normal again. Well, I still had sensitivity in my hair, my skin, but I could still move around.
So, after the war ended, you were still stationed over in Europe?
All that month, all that rest of the summer, we were on border patrol between Germany and Czechoslovakia, regulating any movement of the refugees coming on across the border. And we were there. We were 1 week out on the border. Then there's a small little town in that area, but that's where we were building, in the town. So we were out a week, in a week, out a week, and in a week. It was all, and then in October, finally went ahead and finagled a 5-day pass. So I elected, instead of going to Bush's Garden, down the Alps to go skiing. Hell, I'm a Brooklyn boy, I don't know skiing. So I went ahead and I elected to go to Paris. So I went ahead and got on train, went into Paris. I was in Paris for, say, 3 days. So then I come home, and then I come back, and I had a cousin over there, which I knew. I had his address, but mine was a general address, so nobody could find me where I was. But he was in Munich. So I said, hey, I'll go from Paris to Munich. I went on down Munich, and I looked him up, and he was an officer, and he was in charge of the movie theaters in Munich for the GIs there. That was his job after the war was over. So at any rate, a good little story on him. That in Munich, again, you had town squares, and there's an opera house in Munich that Hitler used to come on down, like the famous, he likes opera. So when he would come in to the opera, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of the times he would stay in this apartment right across the square from the opera house into this restaurant. And that was a story I got at the time. So I went ahead and I asked a couple of GIs where the name of the outfit was, and they directed me on over to this restaurant. And all I can remember, I went in, GI at the desk in the front, I says, where's Lieutenant Mullane? Oh, he's down there. And all I can remember is a great big banquet hall type room. And it was at mealtime, dinner. So I went down there, had him in the back of the head, and he surprised him. So then he was up, I think, on the 3rd floor or whatever. I went to this apartment. And that was the apartment that Hitler used to down and stay. And it was only a 1 bedroom and their living room or that, and the galley kitchen. So what they did is they set up a cot for me in the galley kitchen, and that's where I slept that night. In addition to that, my cousin, when I had just come back from Ireland a week or two before that, and he brought back a Irish quart of whiskey. And he intended to bring it home with him as a souvenir from Ireland. And he told me about all my cousins when he went over to Ireland. The word spread so fast that they were coming over hills and dales. He says, 10 years of a sort. About 50, 75 of our cousins were right there. Greet me. So anyway, he says, I can't keep this bottle. Where is he? He opened it up, and here he and his 2 buddies, they used to live within the room, myself, the foremost, polished off the quart of Irish whiskey that night. Then from there, from Munich, then I went back up to my outfit up with a Czech porter up there. That was in October. And then, about the middle of November, I had the points. See, at that time, in order to come on home, it was a point system. It was the high, medium, and low. And if you had high points, which is all governed on the number of months that you're over in Europe, and number of months you were in combat or whatever, they made up the points. If you had high points, you come on back to the States in May and June and get discharged. The low points, they took them, transferred them back to the States, and were going to send them down to Japan in the South Pacific to fight that war. The middle group was just in limbo, waiting for these 2 groups to be processed to the States. So that's why it took me up until the end of November, when they assigned me to the 90th Infantry Division on the way to come home. So you have to go to a division group. So I left Marseille, France, the 8th of December. I landed in New York the 26th of December. One day after Christmas. But why it took us so long was that there's a hurricane out in the Atlantic. And there's only a little Liberty ship, about 400 guys on it. And we had to skirt around the hurricane. So we had to stay on the east side of the Atlantic. So it took us 4 or 5 days longer to get around. I come into the York Harbor, 26th of December. And when I come in, I was born down in Brooklyn, as I told you. Also down in Rockaway. I don't know if you're familiar at all with the city, but that's right on the ocean. And all the ships coming and going in New York Harbor, I could look out, because between there and Jersey is 20 miles. The ships would come in from the Atlantic there. So you could see the ships coming in from far off distance, maybe 10, 12 miles away. Yeah, I come in, I can see where I was brought up down there right on the beach of Rockaway. Come around the end, and that's on Shore Road in Brooklyn. That's where I lived. There's only 3 blocks off the bay. And there I am, and well, I'm home anyway. So go ahead and dock over in Jersey. Go on down to Fort Dix to get processed to get discharged. Well,
So you were in the middle group then? There was no fear of being sent to Japan?
no.
That's why you really...
Well, see, then, it was all over with. It was all over with then. It was in the middle of August 15th, that the atomic bomb being dropped, the 2 of them being dropped. That saved a good million of GSI lives. Oh yeah. That ended that war real fast. Real fast. It saved us a million lives, GI lives. So, the war was over, so I didn't have no fear there. And I think, now what am I going to do? After service.
So you said in your sheet you went to college after, right?
Oh, see, as I told you, I went to St. Francis Prep when they were in Brooklyn at the time. So I went back to them, because I had the GI Bill. So I asked them, I'd like to go to college, but I can't go to the city. Because I don't think I'd ever be able to make it living at home, because I have to change my environment. I'm not geared up yet. So they said, well, we have St. Bonaventure's, our sister college up there. There's another Franciscan college. Or we have this other new one that just opened up a couple of years ago in '39, Siena, outside of Albany. So I said, hey, all right, fine. Went on up, applied for Siena. When I got into Siena, we started in January of '47. I graduated in August of '50, 3.5 years. I didn't want to spend too much time in college. But when I was junior, going to be my senior year, I got married. I married my wife in August 27th of '49. And then last year, when I was a senior, I was married and graduated in August of '50.
And then you've lived up here ever since?
Yes. Yeah, I come up here and I was living here. My wife went to nursing school at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York City. See, that's how I met her down there, and she was up here. And when I was going to school up here, I would come up here on the weekends. And boy, they didn't have dorms in Seattle at the time. All private homes. So I had a little bit of private home. But on the weekends, I'd come up here to Hudson Falls and stay over here with my wife's family home. And things developed. Got married, have 3 boys. The oldest boy, he's a doctor, nobody met. He's a the head of the neonatal unit. And he went to Union, and from Union over to Albany Med. Graduated from Albany Med, took his residency and internship in Albany Med. Stayed right there, and now he's a certified pediatrician. But he's in charge of the neonatal unit down there. And a lot of headaches on that one. But my second boy, he went to Siena, graduated in '77. And right now he's down in Atlanta, and he's an insurance executive, working for AIG. That's an international company down there, insurance. And he's vice president of marketing. In fact, I just talked to him yesterday, He just come back from Europe. He's over in Europe since Sunday night, over in England and Germany. Yeah, which I didn't realize he was over there, but he was there. I mean, he had a little conference over there. He had to go and give a couple talks. And my third son, he's a graduate of Roger Williams University over in Bristol, Rhode Island, and he's a civil engineer. And he works for Bovis, who again is an international company. Bovis, they're all over the world. And he's working out of Clifton Park office, and he's a senior executive project manager. So that's my three boys, and oldest boy has 5 kids. The oldest just graduated last year out of Georgetown in D.C., and now he's going to Cornell Law School. His second is a girl. She's a senior in Manhattan College, and she's going to graduate next May. His next boy, he's a junior in St. Rose in Albany, and his next boy is a senior in CBA. He's going to graduate next May. Then his fifth one, he's a junior in CBA. So then my second boy in Atlanta, he has a boy and a girl. His boy is a senior in Auburn College in Alabama. And his daughter, she's a freshman in Auburn, Alabama. So he has 2 in the college down there. And my youngest boy here, he has 3 boys. His oldest boy is 16, and he's a junior in Queensbury High. Then the other boy is 12. He's 14 and then 12. So 10 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters, 8 grandsons.
It's quite the legacy.
Yeah, and it keeps me going. That's it. Let him. Yeah, my son here. Well, we used to have the family Thanksgiving dinner at our house. And, well, my wife's mother, she was always the patriarch of having the family. And then when everybody started dying off or whatnot, it come on down to my wife, and then we had it. And then the last time we had it, we were living over in Horgan Avenue in Hudson Falls here. Big house, 4 bedrooms, big living room, formal living room, formal dining room, big family room, 3-bay garage, you know. And we had 36 people for Thanksgiving dinner. And it was a little too much for her, and she did get sick. So right after that, we said, John and Cindy, how about it? You take over. So they, at their last Thanksgiving here, this Thanksgiving, we had a couple of people going scatter around, but we only had 19. Good crowd, but only 19. So we should have had about maybe 28, 29. But a couple of them were sick or whatever, they couldn't make it. But that's a family. We're real tight in a family. Yeah. In fact, I can show you some pictures of family albums. Or, if you want to get through the war book over here, I got an album here. Well, oh, and my second boy, the one's in Atlanta, he and I went on over to Europe in '94 to celebrate our 50th, my 50th anniversary of World War II over in Europe. And we went to London, Paris, Luxembourg City, Munich, and Frankfurt on a 10-day whirl. And it was quite an experience, because they always wanted to go back over and see Germany. Germany's a beautiful country. In fact, there's one memory I had on my mind. And when we hit the Rhine River, and there's a road going along the west side of the river, and we got to get up, and this hotel went up the 5th, 6th, 7th floor, whatever it was. They all have little balconies outside of the windows. So this is what, March? About the beginning of March, I guess. And Buddy and I, a couple of buddies, we go out there, we stand out on the balcony, and here was a beautiful spring morning. It was early, 7, 8 o'clock. And you could just smell the spring air in there. And then so I look up and look to the right, and there you get down south of the Rhine River. Or go to the left and look up to the north of the Rhine River. I said, this is a beautiful country. And I always wanted to go back and see it. And sure enough, I did.
Can I stop you right there for a second?